Hello, travelers and monster catchers abound. I'm Stella Ferris, and you've crash landed on the Monster Catchers Journal podcast. Welcome back. The day started out too routine. Luna, Zenna, and I headed over to the Cross Sigils Outpost, just like we always do. I flipped the sign from closed to open, expecting the usual rush. Normally, by this hour, the place would be swarming with customers, catchers trading stories, kids pressing their faces to the glass, glyph crates stacked by the counter, and goodies stacked so that Luna could make them into, pies and cupcakes and muffins. And Zenna's place set up with her usual glyph healing items. But today, nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no hum of excitement, just silence. That's when it happened, screaming. I don't mean the happy kind either. Not the playful kind, not the kind that comes with a close call or an overexcited glyph. This was panic, raw and tearing. People came running past the shop, faces pale, eyes wide, knocking into one another as if the street itself had turned hostile. I bolted outside and grabbed the arm of a woman rushing by. She had crimson hair pulled back in a loose braid and pale gray eyes filled with fear. "What happened?" I asked. She barely slowed down. "It's Orion Venton," she said breathlessly. "He's back, with a Mothich and a boom boom." And then she was gone. My stomach dropped. I ran towards the sound of explosions, the deep, conclusive booms echoing through the streets. They were coming from Moonfelt Boulevard. The closer I got, the thicker the crowd became, people shouting, crying, pointing skyward. I rushed through until there he was, Orion, the man I'd hoped I'd never have to face again. The Mothich thrashed behind him, wings shedding glowing dust into the air, while the boom boom shook violently, sparks jumping from his shell, terrified. And a scared boom boom is one of the most dangerous things on this planet. You can't keep them, I shouted, louder than I thought I was capable of. The Mothich is unstable, and the boom boom, when it's scared, it can level a block. Orion turned slowly, a smug grin spreading across his face like he'd been waiting for me. "Well, well," he sneered. "If it isn't little Stella Ferris trying to lecture me." He stepped closer, voice dripping with mockery. "Why don't you run back to that school you love so much and leave this to the big leagues, huh? Goody two-shoes." Before I could respond, he climbed into his hover car. The engine screamed to life, and in a flash of light and wind, he was gone, taking both creatures with him. I stood there helpless, watching the sky swallow him whole, and I knew right then this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. A few moments later, the air itself seemed to hum. 6 golden hovercraft descended from the sky in perfect formation, their engines quiet but powerful, light rippling across their polished hulls. I didn't need to guess who they belonged to. The new Council of Elders. My chest tightened as the craft settled around the street, forming a silent ring. Doors slid open in unison, and then Eldrag stepped out. He was every bit as imposing as the stories said. 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered. His presence alone made my 4'11" frame feel insignificant. Like a small ant standing before a mountain, his eyes were sharp, ancient, and heavy with things he'd seen that most of us only read about. "Miss Quasar," he said, his deep voice cracking and cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "You and your friends are to hunt down Orion Venton and retrieve the Mothich and the boom boom at once. They are far too dangerous to be in such hands." I crossed my arms. "Why should I?" I asked, defiance slipping into my voice before I could stop it. Eldrag didn't flinch. "Because the city is counting on you." The words hit harder than I expected. "And where was everyone?" I shot back. "Years ago, when I was being picked on, ridiculed, and laughed at. When no one thought I'd amount to anything." For a long moment, Eldrag said nothing. Then he spoke quietly, but somehow that made it worse. "I don't know," he said, "but I do know that not everything is about you." The crowd went still. "Sometimes," he continued, "we must do what is right, even if it means setting aside our petty pride. Pride is a dangerous thing. When you act with it instead of compassion, people die. I've seen it too many times before." Before I could respond, footsteps approached. Nova Rain stepped forward, her expression calm but firm. "Eldrag is right," she said. "Stellafers, do what's right. If not for this town, then do it for your glyphs. Do it for your two best friends." She didn't wait for an answer. She simply turned and walked away. I exhaled slowly. "All right," I said, at last. We turned to leave, but Eldrag raised a hand, stopping us. "Take these," he said, holding out 3 sleek devices, glyph detector guns. "They're updated," he explained. "You can make holographic calls with them. They now include a full navigation map, and you'll be able to track any glyph you've already seen at least once." He paused. "Be warned," he added, his voice lowering. "Where you're going, no one has set foot there in centuries." My heart skipped. "You don't mean—" "The Unoséf Shipyard," Eldrag said. "But no one's been there in hundreds of years," I replied. A faint grim smile crossed his face. "The perfect place for villains and scoundrels." With that he turned, climbing back into his golden hovercraft, and the council lifted into the sky, vanishing as quick as they had arrived. I stared after them. The Unoséf Shipyard. Ancient, abandoned, forgotten, and now our destination. The Unoséf Shipyard loomed ahead of us like a scar in space. Massive skeletal frames of half-finished starships jutted from the fog, their rusted hulls frozen mid-construction, as if the workers had vanished in the blink of an eye. Ancient docking arms hung limp, creaking as the wind pushed through the hollow corridors. No lights, no signals, just echoes. "This place feels wrong," Luna muttered, her voice barely louder than the hiss of drifting steam. Zena didn't answer. She was already scanning the horizon, one hand resting near her glyph's collar. Even the glyphs felt it, ears flat, tails low, eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. I raised the glyph's detector gun, its screen flickering to life. The map bloomed into a pale blue hologram, layers of old schematics overlapping like ghosts. Most of the shipyard was dead, but not all of it. "There," I said, pointing to residual glyph energy, deep under the central dock. "That's where the Darthma Syndicate would hide," Zena said, "buried, forgotten, and easy to defend." We moved carefully across the broken platform, metal groaning beneath our boots. Every step echoed too loudly, too far. The silence here didn't swallow sound, it remembered it. A sudden click echoed behind us. I froze. "Did you hear that?" Luna whispered. Before anyone could answer, the glyph detector chirped once, sharp and urgent. Boom Boom's signature active. A pulse spiked. "That's impossible," I muttered. "It should be shielded. Unless—" "They want to be found," Zena said. Ahead of us, a massive cargo hauler lay split open like a rib cage. Its interior was pitch black, but faint violet lights pulsed deep inside, too rhythmic to be natural. I stepped closer, raising the detector. The hologram shifted, highlighting something hidden beneath the wreckage. A door. No markings, no handles, just a circular seam edged with symbols I didn't recognize. "This isn't Unoséf tech," Luna said. "It's newer. Darthma." I pressed my palm against the metal. It was warm, too warm. The seam suddenly flared to life, glyph runes igniting one by one. The ground trembled as the door slowly began to rotate open, releasing a low mechanical groan that echoed across the shipyard, and then... A voice crackled through hidden speakers. "Well, well," it purred. "If it isn't the Council's favorite errand runners." My blood ran cold. "Orion." "You're standing at the entrance of the Darthma Syndicate," he continued. "Turn back now or step inside and prove you're worth my time." The door fully opened, revealing a descending passage, lit in deep crimson. The glyphs growled. I tightened my grip on the detector gun. "We're going in," I said, because if Orion thought we were afraid, he was about to learn how wrong he was. As we entered, the door sealed shut behind us with a heavy clank, cutting off the outside world like it had never existed. Red lights pulsed along the walls, bathing the corridor in a constant, slow heartbeat. The air was warmer here, thick, metallic, and humming with stolen energy. Old Unoséf plating had been welded together with newer tech. Jagged and careless, this wasn't just a hideout. It was a fortress. "Stay close," I whispered. We moved deeper, boots echoing through the narrow passage. The glyph detection gun flickered, mapping out branching corridors. Danger markers blinking in dull orange. Somewhere ahead, the boom-boom's energy signature spiked again, sharp, panicked. It sounded like pain. That's when the corridor opened into a vast chamber, the Darthma Syndicate's core. Suspended platforms crisscrossed above a massive reactor pit, its energy spiraling upward in violent purples and blues. Crates stamped with black sigils lined the walls, and at the center of it all, Orion Venton. He stood on an elevated platform, coat flowing, hands clasped behind his back like he owned the universe. Behind him, bound by energy restraints, were the Mothich and the Boom Boom. The Boom Boom trembled violently, sparks snapping across its shell. "Let them go!" I shouted, my voice echoing across the chamber. "You're hurting them!" Orion turned slowly. His smile had changed. "Stella Ferris," he said, amused. "You always did care more about creatures than people." Luna stepped forward. "You're done, Orion. The Council knows where you are." Orion laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "The Council," he scoffed. "They abandoned this plan centuries ago, just like they abandoned you." I clenched my fist. "What do you want?" I demanded. Orion's eyes gleamed. "Power," he said simply. "The Boom Boom is a walking catalyst. The Mothich, a living amplifier. Together, they can wake things this galaxy has wisely forgotten." "That's madness," Zena said. "You'll kill thousands." Orion tilted his head. "Progress always has a cost." I raised my glyph detection gun, aiming it straight at him. "This ends now." Orion sighed, mock disappointment on his face. "You still don't get it," he said, tapping a control panel beside him. "I didn't bring you here to stop me." The restraint around the Boom Boom flared. It screamed. The reactor surged. "I brought you here to choose." Energy barrier snapped into place between us and the platform. The chamber shook violently as alarms blared. "Save the glyphs," Orion called over the chaos, "or save your friends." The floor beneath us split apart, and then the lights went out. I don't know how long we were falling. Seconds. Minutes. Time stopped making sense somewhere between the scream tearing out of my throat and the moment everything went black. When I came to, the first thing I felt was cold. Not the sharp kind. This was damp, heavy. The kind that soaked into your bones and refused to leave. The second thing was pain, blooming slowly across my back and shoulders like I had been used as a landing pad. "Stella Ferris?" Luna's voice. I forced my eyes open. Darkness pressed in on us from every side, thick and absolute. The air smelled of rust, stagnant water, and something faintly electrical. For a terrifying moment I thought the fall had taken my sight. Then a soft blue glow flickered to life, Zena's glyph detector gun. The holographic lights spilled across the room, revealing where we'd landed, a basement-level maintenance chamber. Half-flooded, walls slick with condensation, thick pipes ran overhead like the exposed ribs of some ancient beast, dripping steadily into shallow pools below. We were alive. Barely, but we were alive. "You both here?" I croaked, pushing myself upright. "I think so," Luna said, groaning as she sat up. "Everything hurts, but nothing feels broken." Zena scanned the room, jaw tight. "That was a controlled drop," she said quietly. "Orion didn't want us dead." That realization settled in my chest like a stone. He wanted us delayed. I activated my own detector gun. Its light flared on, casting warm golden light across the chamber. 3 holographic maps snapped into alignment, overlapping and correcting each other until a clear picture formed. We were deep. Far deeper than I had thought possible. This level doesn't even exist on the public Unoséf schematics, I muttered. 'Cause it was never meant to be found," Luna replied. The glyph stirred beside us, shaken but unharmed. One patted closer, pressing its head against my knee, like it needed to make sure I was real. I rested a hand in its fur, grounding myself. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice steady. "We're not done. Not even close." The detector chirped. "Mothich signal active. Boom boom signal critical." My heart clenched. "They're still above us," Zena said, watching the map rotate 2 levels up. "Central reactor sector." Then we climb, I said. Finding a way out wasn't easy. Collapsed corridors blocked half the routes, and several doors were sealed shut with syndicate locks. We waded through knee-deep water, climbed rusted ladders that groaned under our weight, and crawled through narrow service tunnels that scraped at our armor and nerves alike. At one point, Luna slipped on the wet metal, and for a split second I thought we were going to lose her too. I caught her wrist just in time, my fingers burning from the strain. "No more falling," she breathed. "Agreed," I said. Finally, we reached a maintenance lift. Ancient manual, just barely functional. Zena rerouted power from our detector guns. Sparks jumped as the platform lurched upward. The ascent felt endless. Then, voices. Muffled at first, then clear. Orion's voice. We froze, cutting the lift's power and listening as it crept the final few feet. "Keep the boom boom restrained," Orion was saying. "If it destabilizes now, the whole shipyard comes down." My hands curled into fist. We were back. Back where the glyphs were being hurt. The lift shuddered to a stop. The hatch above us was slightly ajar. Crimson light spilled through the crack. I looked at Luna and Zena. No words were needed. I reached for the hatch, and this time we were falling. We weren't falling. We were climbing straight back into the fight. The hatch slid open just enough for us to slip through. We emerged onto an upper platform overlooking the reactor chamber and froze. Orion stood at the far end, one hand resting casually on a control console. But he wasn't alone. Something moved in the shadows behind him. At first I thought it was smoke, thick, living smoke that crawled along the walls and ceiling. Then it stepped forward, and the light caught it wrong. Too many limbs. No true shape. Eyes? Too many of those, too. Burned violet, inside a body made of darkness and fractured glyph energy. My stomach twisted. "A shadow beast," Zena whispered. "A bound one." Orion smiled without turning around. "You made it back," he said calmly. "Impressive. Most wouldn't survive the drop." The shadow beast let out a sound that wasn't a roar, not quite a scream either. More like metal being torn apart inside a storm. I stepped forward, heart pounding. "You don't control that thing," I said. "You're barely holding it together." Orion finally faced us. "That's where you're wrong," he replied. "I don't control it. And now, let me show you the power that this beast holds." The shadow beast lunged. "I feel it." "Glyphs! Now!" I shouted. Golden light exploded at my side as Orbeak burst forward. My golden scarab unfurled its wings, sunlight flashing across its armored shell, stuck-like beak clicking sharply as it took to the air. Scarab wings buzzing like a living engine. Ancient sigils flared across its back as it circled overhead, radiating warmth and clarity that pushed back the shadows. Beside Luna, the ground shimmered, and Myrno emerged. The meerkat rhino planted at her feet, crystalline horns glowing as she let out a sharp chirp. The floor beneath her solidified into hardened stone rings, anchoring her stance, her eyes locked onto the shadow beast, fearless. Zena stepped forward last. The air crackled. Ignazura materialized in a surge of fractured light, her gem-studded tiger form gleaming with reds and blues, heat rolling off her in waves as magma like veins pulsed beneath her crystalline hide. She snarled, a sound that shook the platform. The shadow beast recoiled for the first time. Orion frowned. Interesting, he muttered. The beast struck first. Shadow tendrils whipped forward, slamming into the platform where Orabeak had been moments before. Orabeak dove, wings slicing through the darkness, firing a burst of radiant glyph light from its chest. The blast tore through the shadows, forcing the creature back. Myrno! Luna shouted. Myrno slammed her glowing horns into the ground. Stone erupted upward in jagged spikes, pinning one of the beast's limbs. It screeched, the sound vibrating through my bones, and lashed out, only for Ignazura to leap in front of us. Ignazura collided with the shadow beast head-on. Jim met Boyd. The impact sent shockwaves across the chamber. Ignazura raked her claws through the creature's core, leaving glowing fractures where darkness struggled to knit itself back together. Orabeak swooped low, beak snapping as it struck the creature's eye with pinpoint blast of golden energy. The shadow beast howled. Orion staggered back a step, gripping his console harder. "No!" he growled. "Focus!" The beast surged, shadows thickening, slamming Myrno backward. Luna cried out, but Myrno rolled, skidding to her feet, tail flicking defiantly. "She's still standing!" Luna shouted. "So are we," I yelled back. Orabeak landed on my shoulder for a moment, wings humming, eyes glowing bright. I felt it then, the bond. "Together," I whispered. Orabeak launched upward, unleashing a blinding flare of light that flooded the chamber. Mano charged, horn blazing, shattering the shadow's beast's core restraints. Ignazora roared and leaped, bringing her full weight down in a molten gem shattering strike. The shadow beast screamed as its form destabilized. Darkness unraveled, glyph energy spiraling out of control. Orion shielded his eyes, fury twisting his face. "This isn't over," he shouted. The beast collapsed inward, shadows tearing themselves apart, and a violent implosion that rattled the entire shipyard. When the light faded, the platform was scorched. The reactor flickered, and the shadow beast was gone. Orabeak hovered back down, golden shell gleaming. Myrno stood tall beside Luna, breathing hard but proud. Ignazura lowered her head, emberlit eyes locked on Orion, and for the first time since we arrived, Orion Venton looked afraid. The chamber was shaking when Orion made his move. Warning lights flared from red to a violent white. Alarm screaming through the Unoséf Shipyard like a dying thing. Steam blasted from ruptured vents, and the reactor's glow began to flicker unstable, angry. Orion staggered back, eyes darting from the ruined space where his shadow beast had been just to us, to our glyphs. Orabeak hovered protectively above me, wings beating in a steady, defiant rhythm. Myrno stood planted beside Luna, horn cracked but still glowing. Ignazura prowled forward, heat rippling off her gleam-studded frame, daring Orion to try again. Orion smiled. Not the smug one from before, the desperate kind. "You've made this far more interesting than I expected," he said, backing towards the Mothich's containment rig. The creature was weak now, wings drooping, glow dim and uneven. Every pulse of the reactor made it shudder. "Don't," I warned. "You can't outrun us forever." "Oh, Stella Ferris," he replied softly. "I don't need forever." He slammed his hand down on the console. The floor between us collapsed upward, a rising wall of armored plating slamming into place. Just as Ignazora lunged, her claws scraped sparks across the barrier, but it held. "No!" Zena shouted. Behind the barrier, Orion ripped the Mothich free from its restraints. The creature cried out, a thin piercing sound that cut straight through me. Shadow and light swirled around them as Orion activated his emergency beacon. This was never about winning, his voice echoed through the chamber. It was about survival. A tear in space opened behind him. Small, unstable, crackling with dark energy. Orion, I yelled. Let it go. He looked at me once more, and for just a heartbeat, I thought I saw doubt. Then the rift snapped shut. He was gone. The silence that followed felt heavier than the battle. The alarm continued to wail, but Orion's presence, his pressure on the air, it was gone. The platform barrier lowered slowly, revealing scorched metal and empty space where he'd stood moments before. Luna swore under her breath. He got away. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe, but not with everything. A low, trembling sound drew out our attention. The boom-boom. Its restraints were falling, sparks cascading from the fractured emitters. The poor thing was curled in on itself, energy pulsing wildly. Each surge threatened to turn catastrophic. It's going to overload, Zena said urgently. Not if we help it, I replied. I approached slowly, lowering my glyph detection gun and letting its light soften. Orabeak descended beside me, golden glow washing over the boom-boom like warm sunlight. It's okay, I whispered. You're safe now. The boom-boom shaking slowed just a little. Luna knelt on the opposite side, Myrno pressing close, steady and calm. Ignazura sat back on her haunches, heat lowering to a gentle warmth instead of a blaze. Zena rerouted power from her detector, stabilizing the containment field just enough to hold. There, she said. I've got it temporary, but it'll last. The boom-boom let out a soft, confused chirp. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. We're taking it with us, I said firmly. No cages, no experiments. The shipyard groaned around us, metal twisting as systems failed one by one. We need to go, Luna said. Now. I took one last look at the darkened rift scars where Orion had escaped, where the Mothich had been taken. This isn't over, I said quietly. Not by a long shot. Orabeak fluttered close, resting against my shoulder. We turned and ran, carrying the boom-boom with us, as the Unoséf Shipyard began to collapse, leaving with one life saved and one dangerous enemy still out there. And somewhere in the dark, Orion was already planning his next move. But at least our three-faced firework glyph is okay. And that's all for this episode. May Zelthar shine his beautiful light down on you guys. Thank you for listening. And I will catch you next time on the Monster Catchers Journals podcast. Thank you. Bye now.